Horlicks Network 18, Mission Poshan, Bhavishya Roshan.
And it's World Environment Day, and the theme this time is Beat Plastic Pollution. A special interaction with the people behind this mission is up ahead on the show. Well, lots of action over the next 30 minutes. But first, let's talk about the market action of the day. It was the third straight day of losses on the Lal Street, with the Nifty very clearly giving up the 10,600 mark. Sensex also lost more than 100 points, thus giving up that 35,000 mark that it was holding on to. Midcaps clearly continue to outperform, and that index saw almost 1.3% being shaved off from yesterday's close. So it was a sea of red across the board. Look at the bank stocks. Bank stock, comparatively slightly better than the benchmark indices and ended flat in trade. Here, bringing in Surbhi Upadhyay to take us through today's trade in detail. Surbhi, the correction very clearly continuing on the second day of trade as well.
I'll perhaps sound like a bit of a broken record because the patterns aren't changing in the market. The problem in mid-caps continues, and that is the hallmark of trade this Tuesday as well. The Nifty and the Sensex have finally ended down with a cut of about 0.3%, but that's not the real story. The real story is about the pain that is persisting in the mid-cap and the small-cap universe. In fact, at one point in time, the small-cap index down 3%. It's already fallen 20% this year. There was some recovery from the lows. The mid-cap index also managed to end with a cut just over 1%. Not as bad as the 2% fall that we were seeing intraday. However, having said that, let's give you some examples. Plenty of losing stocks out there. In fact, if I just come up with the list of key losers, even sort of names in mid-cap IT, they were really under pressure today. So Hexaware, KPIT Tech, First Source, NIIT Tech, these were names that were on the lower side. This extended to a lot of other stocks. I mean, you can just take a dart and throw it out there, and you would find losers today. So Bajaj Electric, Lemon Tree, Biocon, despite good news coming in from the US FDA on one of their key drugs, that stock was down almost 9% towards the close. Real estate, which has been one of the best performing sectors of 2017, was under a severe drubbing today. So in fact, stocks like HDIL, Puravankara, many of them were on the lower side. Let's actually talk about the large caps as well now. You had some weakness that was persisting not just in mid-cap tech, but even on the large cap side of the market. So Infosys, TCS, HCL Tech, these names were weak. The likes of L&T were only extending that pressure on the downside. Bharti Airtel saw persistent selling, as did Titan. If I talk about banks, in a very mixed picture, you had the likes of ICICI losing ground, but the HDFC Twins had a very good session today. So HDFC Bank was up. In fact, even HDFC, if I talk about beyond banking, then other heavyweights that were batting for the bulls included in HDFC and also a Reliance Industries along with Cipla. Bottom line, the big caps seem to have a problem, and the unwinding is proving to be extremely painful, at least for the moment.
Well, absolutely. It was a sea of red across most major indices. But thanks, Surbhi, for taking us through that. Let's get some market opinion going as well. We caught up with Rhythm Desai of Morgan Stanley, and he tells us that currently India is witnessing the worst earnings recession in its history. Further, he says that the Sensex target of 36,000 given by him could be wrong.
We've been in a deep earnings recession. This has been the worst earnings recession in India's history. I feel now we have kind of come to a bottom. Revenue growth has been accelerating for the past 6 quarters. Even for this quarter, the revenue growth for various cuts of the market is somewhere between 12 and 15%. So that's a very robust revenue growth. What's not happened as yet is that margins have not recovered. Bulk of this pressure is in the corporate banks. So if you X out the corporate banks, then I think earnings have actually inflected already in the upward direction. On a 12-month basis, rolling basis, the Sensex on an average does about a 40% swing. We haven't had that since 2014. The Sensex has been a very well-behaved person and has not been oscillating as it usually does. So could we get another? Could this be the year in which it does that oscillation? I think it's possible, and we could get that bit of oscillation. So yeah, you point out my forecast of 36, which I said sometime during the show. That I think is going to go terribly wrong. So keep that in mind. But
That is the most pessimistic that we have heard Rhythm Desai be in the last couple of quarters. But let's wait and watch. Foreign investors are definitely losing confidence in some areas as far as the equity markets is concerned. But let's talk about what the equity markets will be watching tomorrow. The Monetary Policy Committee is in a huddle in Mumbai for the second day. The decision on rates is expected tomorrow. A CNBC TV 18 poll shows that a majority of market participants are expecting a status quo. Ritu Singh is here with the details of the poll. Ritu, no expectation of a rate hike.
If you look at the factors that actually shape RBI's policy, simply put in poker terms, it's all in. A sharp increase in global oil prices has hit the Indian economy hard, and the rupee as well, which is among the best, which was actually one of the best performing Asian currencies last year and is now one of the worst in 2018. Also, the robust growth data in Q4 has caused some to see a repo rate hike coming sooner than later. But here's the big one. The key concern for the central bank, which has long kept the repo rate at 6%, is the inflation rate, which is also widely expected to climb further. So the consensus is very clear. I mean, the RBI is getting poised to raise interest rates for the first time since January 2014. But the big question is whether it'll happen in this policy or later this year. Now, a CNBC TV 18 poll shows that 90% are actually expecting a status quo in this policy, and only 10% are expecting a hike from the central bank this time around. But all of our respondents unanimously believe that there will be a rate hike in this calendar year. 80% say that there will be a 25 basis point rate hike in this year, and 20% say that there could be a 50 basis point hike between now and December. Also, majority are expecting a status quo as far as the statutory liquidity ratio is concerned. On the macro parameters, however, all respondents expect RBI to keep the GDP forecast unchanged at 7.4%, which is the last forecast given by the RBI. On the inflation front, the majority expect that the CPI projection of 4.7 to 5.1 for the first half of this year will be left unchanged. But half of the respondents believe that the inflation forecast for the second half, which is currently being pegged at 4.4%, that could be raised upwards from this current level given all the risks to inflation. So while the RBI is expected to stay on repo rates this time around, it is expected to shift its stance to neutral, from actually neutral to hawkish, acknowledging the risks that are present to its current inflation forecast. Do remember, its long-term inflation forecast is about 4%. In the last MPC minutes, there was an interesting thing that came out. One, it was a very hawkish tone, and the highlight really was RBI Deputy Governor Viral Acharya giving a very clear indication that in all probability, his next vote would be for a rate hike.
Okay, fair enough, Ritu. So we were expecting the clamour of rate hike, but we don't know if this is going to happen right now or later. But let's, of course, wait and watch out for that. For now, let's talk about the other big voice today. Escalating trade tensions and rising interest rates are the key risks to global economy at the moment. That's the word from former RBI Governor Raghuram Rajan. Speaking to CNBC, Rajan issued a warning over ongoing trade tussle between the United States and other countries, saying that things can actually get out of control very quickly. Here is very interesting rationale.
Well, I think at this point, the biggest risk is the combination of rising interest rates and some untoward action on trade. I think it's the perception that with all the leverage that's out there, interest rates rising are already an issue that we'll have to deal with, but that's out there. The great uncertainty is what happens with trade. If we have a trade configuration in the next few months, that could really hamper the global economy.
Do you think that's likely? I mean, you've said before, and you have been vocal about it, that a win-win situation is actually possible. As we move through this, not purely rhetoric anymore between especially China and the US, do you see the chances for a win-win resolution actually increasing or decreasing?
Well, the key question is whether these bargaining ploys, threats of levying tariffs, etc., result in real negotiation, which create that win-win situation. Or do players get locked into positions which mean they eventually have to carry out their threats, in which case we are in a lose-lose situation. The problem to some extent at this point is that people have put forward their offers in some sense, and we have to see if they actually reach a negotiation point where they back down. Some of the situations can get out of control very quickly.
The other point that you mentioned, which I'd like to take you up on, is that of interest rates. I think it's something we're specifically focused on when it comes to what's happening with the US economy right now. What is your, I suppose, prediction, first of all, for what we're going to see in terms of rates in the US, and what do you actually think needs to happen there?
Well, I think that the latest news suggests the U.S. economy is actually strengthening, is doing better, is actually doing quite well for an economy in its 92nd year of job creation. So my sense is the Federal Reserve is on a raising path, which it's not going to step off until it feels it's much closer to neutral. And I think most people would say neutral is between 2.75% and 3% at the short end. That means we're probably looking at 3 rate hikes this year, unless something really untoward happens in Europe or in some of the big emerging markets to create global turmoil. But it has to be really bad, in my view, for the Fed to step off this rate rising path. Otherwise, I think they're going to wait, do what they have to do, and then look around to see if they've done enough or they need to do more.
All right, moving on and to an exclusive back home, and this is from the e-commerce space. Few weeks after Walmart bought a strategic stake in Flipkart, Amazon has decided to up the ante and power up its Indian arm. We learned from sources that Amazon may look at raising its India investment target from $5 billion to $7 billion. Now, just to put this into perspective, in 2014, the company had first announced a $2 billion investment. In 2016, they increased it to $5 billion when the Prime Minister Narendra Modi had gone to visit Washington. At that point, Amazon chief Jeff Bezos had clearly said that they will be aggressive in their investment targets for India. Now we understand that the top management and an internal memo, in fact, has been sent out to the team. There is a strategy in place to increase that investment. So $2 billion additional investment is what they are starting with. We understand from sources that that is likely to increase over a period of time. No timeline as such has been given as to by when that investment is likely to be made. But remember, so far, Amazon has reportedly already invested between $3.5 to $3.8 billion. So that remaining, the total of $7 billion should happen in the near term, given the kind of increase in market share that people are anticipating from Flipkart. Amazon, when contacted, however, did not want to comment on rumors or speculation. The latest in the Aircel Maxis case, former Finance Minister and Congress leader P. Chidambaram is being questioned by the Enforcement Directorate since morning. However, he has been granted interim protection from arrest by the Enforcement Directorate till the 10th of July. We have Timsy Jaipuria and Parikshit Luthra joining in with more details. Timsy, coming to you first. You have been outside the ED office since morning. What's the latest that you are picking up with respect to what is ongoing in the questioning?
Well, to be precise, what sources have indicated that till now, first set of questioning has been over, post which he was released for lunch, and now he's back again for the second set of questioning. Now, this entire questioning is on his role in the Aircel Maxis case, where he's been alleged to give illegal SIPB clearance to the Aircel Maxis deal, which was about 3,500 crore rupees worth of deal. Now, let me also bring to you some of the questions that I've picked up from sources which were posed to him earlier in the day. Is why did he advise to the people involved in the Aircel Maxis case to break down the deal into 600 crores each? So why was CCEA not approached for this deal? Why did he give clearance when the deal size was actually too huge, and there were conditions, prerequisite conditions to take the deal to CCEA? Now, the entire case of questioning is continuing even now. Yeah. And for the benefit of our viewers, we must remind them that already in this case, Karti Chidambaram, son of P. Chidambaram, has been questioned twice.
Okay, so thanks, Timsy, for taking us.
Set of questioning happening right now.
Yes, let's take the story forward, actually, Timsy. The Congress party is questioning the timing of P. Chidambaram's interrogation by the ED. In fact, sources from the party tell CNBC TV 18 that the Enforcement Directorate and CBI seem to get active against opposition leaders whenever the Bharatiya Janata Party finds it hard to deliver. Parikshit Luthra is joining in with that story. Parikshit, welcome to CNBC TV 18. The Congress clearly crying foul then.
Thank you very much. And yes, the Congress is strongly backing P. Chidambaram and crying foul, saying that you only get active against cases when it comes to Veerbhadra Singh or Robert Vadra, or a P. Chidambaram or Karti Chidambaram for that matter. And whenever there are cases against top BJP leaders and union ministers, these agencies all go silent. What they're saying is that we're open to any investigation. P. Chidambaram is open to any investigation. There was no wrongdoing, and this is only vendetta politics to, in a way, divert attention from the drubbing that the BJP has suffered in the recent by-poll in Kerala and 10 other states in the country. So they're saying that this is only vindictive politics at the play, and ED and CBI are again and again being used to silence opposition leaders. Back to you.
India's third largest IT major, Wipro, has rolled a flattish hike for this year to its over 1.6 lakh employees. According to sources, the high performers and those working in the digital space received a much better deal in comparison to the others. Rukmini Rao is here with the breakup of these hikes. Rukmini, it's not surprising that the hikes have been flattish, but what is concerning is some of the bearish comments that the CEO has communicated to the employees. Take us through that.
Well, Wipro has rolled out hikes effective 1st of June, and in fact, what we've been given to understand from our sources is that on-site employees have been given hikes anywhere between 3 to 5%, while offshore employees have been given a slightly better 6 to 8% hikes, and the high performers, especially in the digital DD, which is digital innovation and IP and consulting and domain, these guys have been given slightly higher hikes compared to the rest of them. In fact, in a letter addressing the employees, CEO of the company, Abid Ali Nimuchwala, of course, has gone on to say that, in fact, they have hit bump as far as growth goes because of unexpected client bankruptcies and also, in fact, a regulatory hurdle as far as one of their acquisition goes. He's, however, seemed positive by saying that growth will come back in the coming quarters. But however, he has laid greater emphasis on how the employees of the company need to upskill themselves if they want to be relevant, and also has gone on to term this year's hike as something that is expensive for the company, and there has to be, some bit of cost optimization that needs to be done. Also, productivity needs to be kind of up to be able to kind of sustain growth for the next year as well. Back to you.
Okay, Rukmini, thanks for taking us through that. Let's talk about CNBC TV 18 special story now. The theme for this year's World Environment Day is Beat Plastic Pollution. It is a call to action for all of us to come together to combat one of the greatest environmental challenges of our time. India, as the host nation, will lead the efforts to address plastic pollution. CNBC TV 18's Ritu Singh caught up with some of the most inspiring voices behind this mission to discuss what citizens can do to combat this menace.
What is really the cost involved and even the opportunity when we're talking about recycling and being more sustainable for industries?
I tend to believe that we should start with what is the simplest, and the simplest is to avoid all the plastic products we simply don't need.
Yeah.
There is any amount of plastic product which doesn't serve a real purpose in society. Why would you wrap 2 apples, put it on a plate on plastic, wrap a huge amount of plastic around it? Let's get all these out, either through customers ourselves saying we don't need them, or through government simply prohibiting them.
You interact with a lot of companies that are trying to be more sustainable. I mean, what advice would you give? How do you make the business more profitable, at the same time be sustainable and, recycle these products?
If you put up a system, you put an ambition, it's possible to do it. And I think the industry has a very important role to play here. We don't need to debate the good and bad about plastic. There is a lot of use for it, and it's good as a material. But how do you design it for recyclable? How do you, reuse it? So looking at that, and in my world, in my view, the consumption of plastic and packaging waste as such will just increase. As we see the digital economy taking off, I mean, e-commerce, there will be more and more packaging waste. So we really need to engage the value chain here, how we design it so that we can take it back.
Back home here, we need more influencers to really come out in support of these causes and talk about them in public.
We have, in fact, I mentioned this the other day when we were on the Warsaw beach. I feel that there's a revolution underway right now in India. There is an extraordinary level of participation by citizens, and they're demonstrating a commitment and a will to change things at a ground level, and are also inspiring and influencing policy and government. And I'm one of those people. And a lot of the work that I've managed to do over the last decade has only been possible because I have been so deeply motivated and inspired by extraordinary citizen participation.
And we'll get you more special from our World Environment Day coverage through the day. But for now, it's time to wrap up this edition of After the Bell. Many thanks for watching. Stay tuned though. Markets Today Talkback will take all the market action forward on the other side. Don't go anywhere.